This is a story carried by the dust roads of the Eastern Cape. A story told by grandmothers when the fire burns low. A story of a girl whose name was turned into blame. History called her the child who destroyed her people. But stories have bones beneath their skin. And sometimes the hands that caused the fire are hidden behind the smoke. This is the story of Nomsa of Amagula Valley. A quiet girl with gentle eyes. A girl with beaded anklets that chimed softly when she walked. A girl whose dreams were once blessings. Before strangers learned how to wear the masks of ancestors. Amagula Valley was a place where mornings woke gently. The hills rolled like sleeping cattle beneath golden light. Women sang while grinding maize, their voices rising and falling like waves. Men guided strong cattle through green pastures. Children ran barefoot, their laughter scattering birds into the sky. Among them walked Nomsa, a thin young girl with warm brown skin that glowed in the sun, wide thoughtful eyes that always seemed to be listening to something far away, and long braids tied with faded blue beads. Her skirt was dyed with ochre earth, and small bead strings rested against her ankles, chiming with each careful step. Nomsa walked slowly, always observing, always feeling the world deeply. Some villagers greeted her with warmth. Some watched her with quiet curiosity. "The dream child," they whispered. Nomsa, the gentle girl with wide observant eyes, dusty bare feet, and soft ankle beads, once dreamed that a cow would give birth before its time. She spoke quietly to her father, Totajola, a tall man with broad shoulders, deep-set eyes, and weathered hands hardened by years of guiding cattle across the valley. He listened with pride but also caution. And when the calf arrived early, the whispers began. People started coming to Nomsa, the young girl with careful movements and eyes that always looked beyond the horizon, asking about sickness, rain, and journeys. Sometimes her dreams brought comfort. Sometimes they brought warnings. And slowly, belief wrapped around her like a blanket she was too young to carry. Long before deception came, strangers had come openly. Men with pale skin, stiff coats, and eyes that scanned the valley like hungry birds approached Nkosi Fathazwi, the chief, a tall man with graying hair braided tightly, heavy beadwork around his neck, and a calm face that hid sharp intelligence. They spoke of trade. They spoke of sharing land. They spoke of progress. But their eyes lingered too long on cattle, on soil, on water. The chief refused them. The elders refused them. The warriors stood firm like trees rooted in stone. And the strangers left, smiling politely, but watching carefully. Those pale strangers did not go far. Hidden beyond the hills, they watched the valley through narrow lenses. They listened to stories through translators who learned the language slowly, carefully. They learned about ancestors. They learned about dreams. They learned that spiritual voices carried power. And then they saw her. Nomsa, the young girl with soft braids, thoughtful eyes, and ankle beads that chimed like tiny bells, surrounded by villagers seeking guidance. One of the pale men said quietly, "We do not need to break their warriors. We only need to speak through their prophets." And the plan began. Nomsa, the gentle girl with earth-dyed skirt and eyes that held both curiosity and fear, continued dreaming true dreams. She dreamt of rain, and rain came. She dreamt of lost cattle, and they were found. Mama Zinzi, A strong woman with sharp cheekbones, wrapped headscarves, and wise tired eyes, watched her closely. She warned softly. Not every voice that speaks softly comes from love. But hope is louder than caution when fear begins to grow. The pale men studied Nomsa, the quiet girl with careful steps and eyes that seemed too old for her young face. They watched how villagers trusted her. They learned her routines. They listened to elders' stories and practiced sacred phrases in secret. They dressed in white cloth. They painted ash on their skin. They learned how ancestors were described, how spirits were said to move, how sacred language sounded. And slowly, they built a mask. One night, Nomsa, the young dreamer with trembling hands and bead-wrapped ankles, fell into deep sleep. A glowing figure appeared before her. Its skin pale like moonlight. Its voice speaking her language perfectly. But beneath the glow, boots pressed into dust. Beneath the robes, lantern light flickered. The figure praised her. "You are chosen above others," it said. It gave her a small prophecy, one the colonizers already knew would happen. When it came true, belief grew stronger. And the trap tightened. Nomsa, the gentle girl whose eyes now carried both pride and confusion, found more people coming to her door. Mothers with sick children. Men worried about crops. Young girls asking about marriage. Some bowed to her. Some cried in relief when she spoke. Her father stood taller with pride. Mama Zinzi watched with silent worry. And from the hills, pale men wrote notes, smiling slowly. Seasons shifted. Cattle fell ill. Rain came late. Stories spread of settlers taking land nearby. Fear entered the valley like cold wind. Nomsa, the young girl with trembling confidence and eyes searching for guidance, felt the weight of expectation pressing against her chest. And the pale men prepared their greatest deception. When thunder shook the valley. Nomsa, the slight young girl wrapped in a worn blanket, braids clinging to her face with sweat, dreamt again. The pale glowing figure appeared stronger, louder, surrounded by symbols the colonizers had learned from stolen stories. Old things must die for new blessings, the figure said. Nomsa woke shaking. Half afraid. Half honored. Completely alone inside a storm she did not understand. After the storm, Amagwala Valley woke under a sky that felt heavier than before. Nomsa, the young Xhosa girl with warm brown skin now slightly pale from sleepless nights, long thin braids tangled from restless dreams, and faded blue beads that no longer chimed with the same innocence, walked slowly through the village. Her ochre skirt was dustier, her eyes tired, her shoulders carrying a weight she could not explain. People looked at her not just with curiosity anymore, but with expectation. An expectation is a burden that grows heavier each time someone believes you hold their future. Nomsa, the slim young dreamer with trembling hands and wide eyes searching for reassurance, stood before Totajola, her tall father with deep worried lines now forming across his weathered face. She spoke of a dream, louder than all before. She described the glowing pale messenger, the ancestors demanding sacrifice, cattle to be slaughtered, crops to be cleared, old life destroyed so new blessings could arrive. Her father hesitated. Mama Zinzi, the strong herbalist with tired wise eyes and a headscarf now loosened from stress, felt cold fear settle in her chest. But hope had already entered the hearts of many villagers like wildfire through dry grass. Nkosi Fathazwi, the tall dignified chief with graying braids and heavy beadwork that now hung heavier with responsibility, listened as Nomsa, the young girl with shaking breath and uncertain confidence, repeated the dream. Elders argued. Some said no child could command a nation. Some said ancestors choose unexpected vessels. Some said desperation makes people hear what they want to hear. Outside, colonizers watched from distant hills. Commander Hendrik, the pale European man with calculating eyes hidden beneath a colonial coat, smiled slowly. Nkosi King Fathazwi, the aging leader whose proud shoulders now bent slightly under pressure, walked alone at sunset. He looked over cattle fields growing thinner, children growing hungry, warriors returning with stories of land already lost beyond the valley. And sometimes, when fear is loud, hope sounds like truth. He allowed the prophecy to be shared. Not with full command, but with enough authority to let belief grow. Time passed. Nomsa, the once bright young girl whose eyes now carried shadows beneath them, whose braids looked less neat, whose steps had grown slower, watched her words divide the people. Some slaughtered cattle first, believing abundance was near. Others resisted, clutching their animals and seeds like lifelines. Friends stopped speaking. Families argued at night. Children watched fear grow in adult faces. Mama Zinzi, the herbalist with tense jaw and sleepless eyes, tried to warn people. But hope mixed with fear is louder than wisdom. Hidden beyond the hills. Commander Hendrik and his pale companions, dusty coats, sharp eyes, quiet laughter, marked new territories on maps. They watched smoke from slaughtered cattle rise like silent surrender. They wrote letters describing a nation destroying its own strength. And they waited. Nomsa, the fragile young girl whose hands trembled each time she spoke, whose voice grew softer even as crowds grew larger, stood in the center of the kraal as cattle were killed. Drums beat slowly. Some people cried. Some sang with faith. Some looked at Nomsa as if she carried the voice of the sky itself. Her father, Tota Jola, the strong man now hollow-eyed and unsure, struggled to hide his doubt. Mama Zinzi watched from distance, grief sitting heavy on her shoulders. Days passed. Then weeks. The sky remained silent. The fields grew empty. Nomsa, the young girl now thin from stress, braids loose, eyes red from sleepless nights, waited for the pale messenger to return with promises fulfilled. But the dreams grew quieter. And hunger grew louder. Children cried at night. Warriors grew weak. Elders stopped telling stories by the fire because there was no energy left for words. Nomsa, the once hopeful girl whose face now carried deep guilt she could not understand, walked through the village seeing hollow cheeks and silent cooking fires. And far away, colonizers opened their gates offering food in exchange for labor, land, obedience. The plan was complete. Families left the valley in search of survival. Cattle fields turned to empty dust. Nkosi Fathazwi, the proud chief now aged beyond his years, watched his people scatter like birds chased from their nests. Mama Zinzi, strong but grieving, held Nomsa close one evening as the girl cried without sound. Nomsa, the young dreamer now carrying the weight of a nation's suffering, whispered, "I only wanted to help." and the wind carried her words into silence. Years passed. Stories changed. Some said Nomsa destroyed her people. Some said she was a prophet misunderstood. Some whispered of pale tricksters who wore the masks of ancestors. But history, written by powerful hands, remembered only a girl. And so, her name became a warning instead of a question. If this story moved your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe, so more stories from African history and folklore can continue to be told, remembered and understood from many voices. Sometimes the loudest blame falls on the smallest shoulders. Powerful people may hide behind innocent messengers. And when fear is strong, even good hearts can be led into darkness. But stories remind us to question, to listen deeply, and to protect the voices of children from the weight of grown people's wars. Please tell me in the comment section where you are watching this video from. I would like to see how far my story has traveled. Thank you for watching Stories by Sukapila.